Most hurricanes will weaken just before landfall. But that was not the case in 2007 when Hurricane Dean struck the Yucatan Peninsula as a Category 5 storm. Then, 2 weeks later, Hurricane Felix roared ashore with the next Cat 5 impact on September 4th, 2007. Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, now in its second year from the Weather Network in Canada. When Felix made landfall, it struck just south of the border between Nicaragua and Honduras. This day in weather history. Felix was the sixth named storm, second hurricane, and second Category 5 hurricane of the 2007 Atlantic hurricane season. It formed, normally enough, from a tropical wave on August 31st. From its formation, it went on to pass through the southern Windward Islands on September 1st before attaining hurricane strength and status. On the 2nd, Felix ramped up into a major hurricane. Then on September 3rd, it was upgraded to Category 5 status. Things were really serious now, and although later that day it was downgraded to a Category 4 storm, it was only temporary. Hurricane Felix rose again to the level of Category 5 for the second and final time on the morning of September 4th, with sustained winds at 260 kilometers per hour, or 160 miles per hour. You must remember that this region is very hilly and very mountainous, so it's prone to mud, rock, and landslides with just average events of heavy rain. But this was well beyond that intensity, and it triggered devastating floods and mudslides. Welcome to year 2 of this podcast. Right now, you're listening to the full version of today's story on your favorite podcast provider. But there's also the daily podcast video short. They're shot right here in my podcast recording studio, so you get that perspective. But oftentimes, they will include visuals from that day's event, from when it happened, in weather history. So after listening to the full story, go check out the podcast video short on television or online anytime at theweathernetwork.com/weather history. And just to dovetail from that, if I can, I'd like to remind you where you can catch this podcast. If you might be picking this up off our site or from within a story, you can look up or ask for This Day in Weather History, wherever you normally listen to your favorite podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Alexa, and now every day on yahoo.ca. Almost 10 years prior, this same region suffered major hurricane damage from Mitch in 1998. So therefore, Nicaragua was prepared as a result of this. Hurricanes, however, are still stronger than anything mankind can prepare for. And Felix went on to cause at least 133 deaths and hundreds of millions of dollars in damages to Central America. Due to the extent of the damage and the amount of people who were killed by this storm in Nicaragua, the name Felix was officially retired by the World Meteorological Organization during its annual meeting in Orlando, Florida, May 13, 2008, and therefore will never be used again for any future Atlantic hurricanes. The next time a sixth named storm or a storm starting with the letter F would be used, it would be Fernand on list V of that Atlantic hurricane naming session, and that was used during the 2013 Atlantic hurricane season. As for Felix, it had done enough on September 4th of 2007. Hey, do you like the podcast? We'd love to hear from you. If you have an idea, go right now to wherever you're listening to me and rate us if you would, please. It's on a 5-star system, and we would love as many stars as you can afford. So rate us, but then also review us. This way we can always stay on top of how you'd like to see the show evolve. Then remember to subscribe to this podcast. Click the subscribe or follow button right there on the very same podcast homepage you're listening on. You'll be immediately reminded that the next day is ready to listen to, and you also have access to every episode in the archives. It dates back to June 1st of 2020, so there is a lot that we got to get caught up on this day in weather history. Tomorrow is September 5th. And we're going back for more Cat 5 hurricane action. Tomorrow is the day in 2017 that another hurricane entered the League of Hurricanes named Katrina, Dorian, Harvey, and the one that struck on Labor Day in 1935. We're talking about Cat 5 Hurricane Irma. That's tomorrow, September 5th, on this day in weather history with me, your host, Chris May.